Clark Kent was still a young man, still living with his pa and ma in Smallville, Kansas. He one day decided to explore around the town on his bike, but hit a rock in the road. He slid across the pavement, and his bike was bent, but he didn't even have a scratch. He looked confusedly around and saw a limousine headed directly at him. The hood was marked with an L, and it came about an inch away from his face. A man stepped out the back. He had long red hair and a beard. He looked down at the young man and reached his hand out. "Are you okay?" the man asked. Clark stood up and wiped the dust off his jeans. Yes, sir, I think I'm good," Clark said. The man introduced himself as Alexander Luthor, and also introduced his son to Clark, Alexander Luthor Jr. He preferred to go by Lex, but that didn't matter. And he and Clark seemed friendly. Alexander offered to drive Clark back home, and Clark accepted. Clark and Lex seemed like they could be good friends. An alarm went off, and Clark woke up. He realized that he'd just had a dream remembering his childhood. He stood up out of his bed and got into his clothes. His Superman costume was underneath his normal clothes, ready to be deployed in case any trouble. Clark looked over to pictures of Smallville, showing Lex and his father, Ma and Pa Kent, and even some random pictures of the town. He smiled, but then prepared his paper and pencil. He was rather concerned, since recently, in his adventures as Superman, he had come into conflict with Lex. Lex hated non-human creatures, as he called them. This was mostly focused towards Superman. Clark remembers how happy Lex was as a child, but now business had changed him to fear anything different from himself. So he sent robots after Superman at multiple times. Today, however, Clark was hopeful that Lex would do some good. He claimed to have invented a way to help enforce astronauts studying in space, geologists deep in the Earth, and help people in any other hazardous scenarios. So Clark finished buttoning his shirt and walked out of the door. At the office, Clark Kent, Lois Lane, and Jimmy Olsen were ready for Lex. The Daily Planet's owner, Perry White, was very upset at them, as he wanted them to go to a football game. "Sir, with all due respect, Mr. Luthor is doing something that can benefit everyone," Clark said. Perry grumbled, but then opened the door for them, right as Lex's limo arrived. He was a far cry from his childhood self. As a child, he had red hair like his father, but now he was bald. He greeted them all, and they all talked in the car on the way to Lex's penthouse for the interview. During the discussion and the interview, Lex tried hiding his secrets and successfully did that. However, during the interview, Clark asked to be shown the restroom, and Mr. Luthor's valet and personal assistant, Mercy Graves, led him to the restroom. As Clark finished and walked out, he saw Mercy rolling a gray cart with mechanical pieces down the hall. Clark used his X-ray vision to inspect and only saw a few motherboards and a blinking green light. After Clark returned, Lex, Clark, Jimmy, and Lois got into the limo again to go to a press conference. When they arrived, Clark scanned the rooftops to see if there were any snipers or other issues. Lois stood with the other reporters, Jimmy stood ready with his camera, and Clark held his paper and pencil, ready to write about this event. Lex came onto the stage with purple and green confetti raining down upon him. Lex stood proudly and spoke up. "Hello, Metropolis, and hello, world. As you are probably aware, I am Lex Luthor. I've spent a while now protecting our city from that foul alien Superman." Clark was taken aback by this. "And now, I'm here to protect our scientists from any hazards they face, even that alien menace. Instead of just listing off my invention's capabilities, I'll just introduce you to Metallo." Lex pulled off his shirt and the jacket on top of it, and revealed a metal face sitting on his chest. A robotic implant had been placed into Lex, and it dispensed nanomachines all across him, suiting him up in a suit of armor. As he paced on the stage, the suit contorted to fit Lex. However, the helmet's eyes started to glow green, and Lex screamed. Metallo leapt forward, slamming into Clark, saying, Alien detected, flying him up into the atmosphere. Up there, Clark decided to unbutton his shirt and reveal his Superman costume. Superman and Metallo battled high in the atmosphere, but throughout the battle, Superman found himself becoming drained and feeling weaker by the second. It especially got bad whenever Metallo used his prime power source. Superman felt as though he had to restrain himself, since Lex was a friend of his as a child, but he still had to stop him. Superman tried punching Metallo back down to Earth, and Metallo returned that with a green laser blast. Superman fell from the sky all the way back to the Earth, landing headfirst in the sand. Superman flashed back to years ago, when he was first starting to become Superman. He had discovered his powers and wanted to maybe help clean up Gotham. Batman and him disagreed, so Superman went to Metropolis, but not before saving Batman from Bane. Superman reminded himself of how Batman, a normal human, could stand up to someone that not even the Kryptonian could take on alone. Just then, Superman was woken up by a clicking noise. He opened his eyes to see a man in a metal suit with a wrist cannon on his arm standing over him. Superman recognized him from Batman's databases. This is Deadshot, otherwise known as Floyd Lawton. Deadshot continued standing until a spear popped out of a nearby bush and knocked him unconscious. A woman dressed in an ornate gold costume stood and pulled Superman up. Her cohort helped, and they carried him away to their temple. Diana sat on the throne, and she and Superman talked about Metallo, and they decided to work together. Artemis, her cohort from earlier, disapproved, but she couldn't rebel against the Queen. Diana suited up in a red, blue, and gold costume, and her and Superman went back to Metropolis. When they arrived, they found that LexCorp had been fully corrupted by Metallo. Diana flew down and started fighting Mercy Graves, and Superman fought Lex again. Now, powered by the unity between himself and Diana, plus remembering how Batman overcame Bane, he beat Metallo and ripped the shell off of Lex Luthor. However, when Lex fell out, he was dead. Apparently, Metallo had stopped him from breathing, and he had died in the suit. But Superman feared that he was the one who killed Lex. He flew away, distraught, and hid in a glacier in solitude.